everyone. Good evening. Welcome on a Sunday evening for a very special discussion on gender and breaking gender stereotypes. A little bit of the project details. This is a GIZ funded project and it's called Work Together, Win Together. And the main objective of this project is basically to mobilize youth from different parts of the country to understand what is peace building and for them to initiate peace building initiatives, as well as monitor hate speech in general in social media in Sri Lanka, and also to strategize as to how to combat that or kind of respond to that positively. So in that lines, we have been having a couple of FB live sessions with resource persons who are specialized in many aspects, many topics. And today we have Kamani Jinadasa, who is a gender expert. And she will be talking on gender and breaking gender stereotypes. Hi, Kamani.
Hi, Kiru. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. And now you're in Vienna, no?
Yeah. It's nice and sunny here today, fortunately.
So why don't you tell our audience about yourself, what you do, your passion?
Okay. So I've been working in the field of gender for many years, but I think my work actually getting into gender was from sexual reproductive health, working as a volunteer with the Family Planning Association. So SRH is a key area for me. Another area connected to it, of course, is gender and gender-based violence. In the field of gender-based violence, it's more on masculinities because I want to really understand how is it that men perpetrate violence and what can we really do to reduce violence. And through that work, it led to me to conceptualize an idea of setting up an organization called Shanthi Maargam. The purpose is to work with young people, children and adolescents, to improve their emotional well-being so that in order to reduce perpetration of violence in their adulthood and as they grow older, which I think we'll be touching on some of those elements also. Yeah, that's it about me. I work as a consultant for Sri Lanka and also for the South Asian region and internationally, mainly on prevention of gender-based violence.
Lovely. And I also would like to tell the audience, I know you in person as well. I have worked at Shanthi Maargam before, and I also know that you are a great human being who have a passion in what you're doing at Shanthi Maargam, and you believe in all that. So, and now we are good friends as well. So let's go straight into the topic. So talking about gender and gender stereotypes. What is gender? What is this gender stereotype?
Yeah. A very important question, right? So, okay, so when we are born into this world, we are born with various reproductive organs, on which basis people are differentiated as man or woman, or girl or boy. So there's that biological attribution to a particular sex, girl or boy. And then as you grow up, society has this expectation as to how a girl or how a boy should behave. It involves all kinds of characteristics of attitudes, behaviors, how you present yourselves in society. So those beliefs or those norms that are attached to each person, or male or a female, is what you call gender. So that's gender norming, gender stereotyping. So you're expecting, when you see a person who is biologically supposed to present themselves as a man, you're expecting particular behaviors that society attaches to that person for being a man. And likewise for girls. I mean, for girls, we've had these conversations about how you're expected to be quiet, how you're expected to be pretty, long hair, maybe I'm meeting a part of the gender stereotype, how you're supposed to cook, you're supposed to be wanting to be a mother, you're supposed to be caring and emotional. Whereas when it comes to men, the expectation is that they're strong, aggressive, macho, they don't show emotions, and they will be the ultimate breadwinner in the family, for example. And also in terms of sexual relationships, for example, girls are expected not to have a sex drive, whereas men are expected to, and which leads to a lot of complications also, which I think we will discuss later on.
Right, exactly. So now we were talking about where, when male and females, when they are born, they are assigned a particular sex or gender, and then you have certain expectations for a particular sex/gender. How does this affect children, adolescents, and youth? How does it affect?
So when society expects you to behave in a particular way, you feel a pressure that as a girl, I am expected to dress in a particular way. I'm expected to speak but seen but not be heard. As a boy, I'm expected to be brave. I'm expected to not get scared when I see a snake or something like that. And within this combination also comes the third gender, which we don't talk enough about, which is the transgender community. And where it can be a person who is biologically a girl, but connects with being a boy, right? Or it can be vice versa, or it could be both. I mean, it's fluid. But so say, for example, if you're transgender and you're growing up and you're starting to realize, wait, I'm not fitting this mold of expectation of how to behave and feel like a boy. I'm not fitting this mold of how I'm expected to behave and feel like a girl. The challenges, the sense of being isolated also becomes a huge issue for transgender people. I have friends of mine, when they started connecting with this, with their feeling of, I mean, you don't label it as a child, but when they realized they were transgender, how they felt suicide ideation because they felt they wouldn't be accepted. And I think that also, and sadly, it also really depends on your family environment, your friends and society, how they view transgender community. If it's accepting, then it's easier. And in that same manner, for a girl or a boy, if they don't fall within the norms of expected behavior, say, for example, if a girl is a tomboy, she can be cornered. But I think in terms of the gender roles, you see a lot more negative effects on boys if they don't fall within the mold of being brave, taking risks. Risk taking is also an element of assigned to the male gender. And they can be ridiculed, they can be bullied, they can't cry if they hurt, if they felt a physical experience. And stemming from that, Kiru, is you go into a very serious issue of how then these genders would process experience of sexual or physical abuse. So, for example, in girls, so you would know more that the perpetrator is most likely to be someone you know. And it can be a family member, it can be a teacher, it can be someone close to the family in the community. And so since girls are expected not to speak out, not to speak their voice, and to be well behaved, they feel that they don't have a voice to speak out if they've experienced some kind of abuse. And also sadly, because of a lot of norms, other social norms you see about victim blaming, where society tends to blame girls for the way they dress, the way they look is why they are experiencing some kind of sexual violence. They will also do the victim blaming. So it becomes internalized, and they have to normalize these experiences in order to survive in this cycle. of violence, because most often it's repetitive also. And studies have shown that girls who have experienced abuse are quite likely to be in abusive relationships as they grow older, because they have to normalize that experience. When it comes to boys, I was involved in this care study in Sri Lanka, called Broadening Gender Why Masculinities Matter. And it was predominantly a survey that was done with men, 1,600 odd men from 4 districts. And the findings were that out of the sample, about almost 30% had experienced sexual abuse. One of the highest rates in the region, actually. And the thing is, like, because society expects men to not show emotions, and also society is not geared to listen to men having issues, mental health, physical, emotional issues. They don't have anyone to talk to. And, you know, they have to bear this burden of having this experience throughout their childhood into adulthood. And surveys have shown that some boys who do experience child abuse are likely to become perpetrators of intimate partner violence or even violence within communities as they grow older. And I spoke of the transgender effect. I mean, it's really sad because transgender children and youth, they tend to face a lot of abuse, not only from families, but also from communities. In Sri Lanka, we have enough experiences amongst the transgender community. And unlike the other 2 genders, they don't even have a space. They feel they don't have a space to turn to at all. And there's a lot of trauma internalized for these genders. So it's so wide sweeping, the effect of being termed or classified as a particular gender, from how you're supposed to react to situations to how you deal with the very negative experience. It can be determined based on your gender, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you spoke about the transgender community also, as you correctly said, that a lot of us, we don't speak a lot about this third gender, slash the transgender community, male to female, female to male. So I'm very glad that you actually spoke about it, and thank you. But I was also thinking now, these kind of issues you were talking about in terms of gender, because of these gender roles, you know, a lot of people go through a lot of issues due to these expectations and all. Is it the same issues where all the countries of the world kind of face, or do you think that particularly in Asia, countries like Sri Lanka, some of these issues are amplified because of maybe culture, religion? I mean, can I get your insight on this?
Yeah, I feel it is really amplified in cultures which are known to be, what do you call it, like traditional, there's a word for it, but conservative. So, for example, in Sri Lanka, you will know that as women, we're expected to wear sari or kurta or, you know, dress in feminine ways if we want to be recognized and accepted, say, at meetings, right? But also it goes way beyond that. It goes to also like how are girls groomed to become future women. And when I say this, I mean it in the lines of, for example, in some of my work where we're looking at, for example, in Sri Lanka, we have one of the lowest female labor force participation rates in South Asia. It's 34% women are in the labor workforce, as against like 79% of it being men. So when you look at the reasons for it, it's because girls are groomed to become housekeepers, carers in the family. That is the key expectation. So you will see, like, even in our education system, we have more girls getting their bachelors, like in tertiary education, as against to men. But suddenly, like, they are missing from the workforce. It doesn't translate into them contributing to to the workforce. And when you explore, a key factor is because the expectation of them is once they get married to stop working and to look at home, stay at home and look after children. And they're expected to have children. So if you're a woman who doesn't believe in that idea, you're going to be you're going to feel marginalized. And you see that a lot in South Asia. In South Asia, you see a lot of low numbers of female enforced participation. In South Asia, you see child marriages, an expectation of girls to be married off early, right? So it's a combination of, okay, what are societal norms, the societal norms of expectations of how girls should behave, plus there's the added layer of tradition and culture, which you see in the form of being very unhealthy for girls, early child marriages, which deprives a girl child of education, puts her at risk in terms of in her, if she has to have a child early, it can lead to high levels of maternal mortality. In certain countries where, say for example, Pakistan, Afghanistan, if a girl is raped, she may experience an honor killing, right? Her brother, her father, or someone will kill her, right? How is that even possible? And how does that make her, so how would a girl ever even speak out in that kind of community if she's had a negative experience of abuse, right? In Nepal, you will see Chaupati, where a girl who gets something as natural as menstruation, as periods monthly, is put into a cowshed outside, and you have a number of reports of fatality. So what I'm trying to say, it's a combination of, from, religions, culture, those expectations of a girl's trajectory, and it affects girls the most in a very negative way. And you see that a lot in South Asia, and it translates into poor health, low education attainment, no female enforced participation, which means that girls at the end, they lack more access to, you call, social protection. Because say, if you're in a job, you are entitled to pension, you're entitled to EPF, ETF. And that's why I may be going on a lot here, but in Sri Lanka, for example, women have a higher life expectancy as opposed to men. But what is happening to these women is that they have no money to keep them going, because they haven't been working when they were in that time when they could participate in the workforce. And so it has a lot to do with culture, because I live here in Austria. I've lived in the States, I've lived in England. You see so much of, girls being encouraged to just do whatever they want, take up whatever profession they want. And there's enough safety to travel across wherever they want. Whereas, say, for example, if a girl in Sri Lanka were to have a negative experience, say, if she goes hiking in the forest, something I personally love to do, which I could never really do in Sri Lanka alone, quite likely people are going to say, you asked for it. Like, what were you doing? What were you thinking? And so that reduces girls also from experiencing their lives, their potential, because of how culture expects them to behave. And you see the girls, say, in Sri Lanka, women in Sri Lanka who do take mold. It's like a huge moment, and it's very important also to have role models who are breaking this mold. And in men, you see, I have to say, in terms of intimate partner violence, Kiru, be it Europe or be it Asia, the numbers are pretty much the same. But the sense of entitlement and expectation of how, like, a man's right to own, like, a girl, a woman, is much higher in our side of the globe. And you will see a lot of justification for, Chulin Kodikara did a study many years ago about how men use, like, if a woman doesn't cook a meal properly, it's okay to beat her. She can face more experience of domestic violence. And I think it has a lot to do with the cultural perspectives, because even women in our side of the world also tend to like expect, say for example, I've heard many times where, say for example, a woman is experiencing domestic violence in a marriage, she's expected to put up with that as opposed to stand up for herself. Like, you know, I experienced this, you know, just don't create trouble, you know, he's the man, let him be the man. And so, yeah, so yes, in our side of the world, due to cultural traditions and norms and all that, you will see a lesser degree of, well, a more impact of this concept or expectation of gender.
Now, with what you said so far, I have a couple of questions, so I don't know which one to ask first. But what I want to ask now is, I remember I was talking to one of my friends who's a lawyer, and he said that in Sri Lanka we do have a protection of domestic violence act. Prevention of Domestic Violence Act, section number 23, which says that, you know, any two cohabitants under one roof can seek redress if they go to the police station, and it is there. But then what we understood is that a lot of women do not go for intimate partner violence or domestic violence. Why is it?
The key reason, Kiru, that comes up is one thing is lack of trust in the system. How will the system protect them? Issues of access to services also. In Sri Lanka, most services around domestic violence, child abuse, etc., are from individuals who have set up from the CSO or NGOs. But the key reason why women will not leave a marriage is because they're not economically independent. There's a dependency on the male, the husband or the partner. And most often you will see women who have children also. Like there's an added layer. So there's one layer of financial dependency on the partner. And then if they have children, it becomes more complicated because women are more likely to think more about the well-being of their child. I've heard so many stories of women who will put up with a lot until they feel the child is old enough to get on with their lives. And that is why also certain domestic violence service providers do try to integrate livelihood services for women, but it's very difficult. So yeah, the key reasons are those: service provision, lack of trust in the system, and also the economic dependency on the husband or the partner.
And also, recently I was talking to one of my friends, and then she was saying that, you know, one of her friends who is married to a man who had gone through marital rape. And I was just, you know, talking to some of my friends who are lawyers, and they said that there's no laws regarding this marital rape. So and a lot of us also don't know what is this marital rape. Does it even exist in Sri Lanka, you know? Can you give some insight on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to first refer to some statistics once again from the CARE study that I mentioned earlier. So one of the questions that was asked in that study was, how many of you men perpetrated rape? And the age group who were subjected to this questionnaire were between the ages of 18 to 49. And the question was, when did you perpetrate your first rape? Okay, if you perpetrated rape, when did you perpetrate your first rape? Within the sample, almost 30% were between the ages of 15 to 19 when they perpetrated their first rape, which is why we really, really need to work with youth. And it is non-partner rape, which means that they have had nothing to do with this person. It could be some random person or a friend's sister. I mean, we've never really gone deep into exploring that, right? But that's a statistic. Then the next, well, the higher statistics is actually amongst men between the ages of 20 to, I think, 24, 25, or I think 30. It's It's in the age of marriage, and that was, I think, something like 60%, if I'm not mistaken. I could clarify this. And what we understood when we started analyzing this information is that, you know what, this must also include those who are married and who are perpetrating marital rape. So in Sri Lanka, you are correct. There is no marital rape has not been criminalized. It means that when you're in a marriage, you are forced to have sex or physical relationship or sexual relationship with your partner, with your husband. And in Asia, you see a lot of it. And unfortunately, there is no legislation. And there are quite a few people who have been lobbying for recognizing marital rape as an offense. And unfortunately, it hasn't really moved forward yet. But yes, does that answer the question? Or did you want more?
As I was saying, those statistics is very scary and it's surprising, especially the age between 15 to 19 is a 30%. That's absolutely.
And I think another statistic that is really important from that study is the men who perpetrated rape were asked, what were your motivations for perpetrating rape? And, you know, it was a scale of ticking off what were the things that were relevant. And sexual entitlement was 60% of the reason why men felt like their motivation for perpetrating rape. Whereas much less than that, say in the range of, say, 4%, 3% was around, I was feeling fun, it was like fun, or I was bored, or I was under the influence of alcohol. So, you know, this is why, and across the region, so this was a study that contributed towards a regional study in 4 other countries. And in all countries, that statistic was pretty much the same, which means that there's this sense of sexual entitlement that men have. They grow up with it, right? Boys grow up with it. So this is why it's so important. That's why I said the whole thing of men are supposed to have, it's accepted that men have a higher sexual appetite than women, right? So this is the combination. So then you allow men to behave in a particular way. You don't hold them accountable. And if we are to go further in the studies, in that same study on rape, you found that only 2% of the men were actually held, like faced any legal consequences for perpetrating rape. Only 2%. 2%. Yeah. So that says a lot about the system, why people, there are lots of a myriad of reasons, but the aspect of lack of accountability, I mean, that's a different conversation altogether. But, you know, this aspect of sexual entitlement and going hand in hand with what is expected of a particular gender, how are they expected to behave? You know, in the States, they've done some good studies, and there's a fantastic documentary. I think I showed you all the trailer of The Mask You Wear. And that documentary shows statistics, you know, it starts talking about rape, date rape, college rape, all that stuff. And in all these cases, you never see, like, it's always like, oh, this poor boy, he's about to start his college career. And this has, you know, he's being slammed with this allegation. As opposed to, excuse me, this person perpetrated rape, you know? It's almost like, you know, and then there's always the, oh, she was drunk and she was this and she was wearing this. And, you know, so there again, the gender expectations of, you know, how this is how it really, really negatively comes out. Also, Kiru, I mean, moving away from sexual violence is the aspect of mental health. Like you will see in terms of systems are more ready to address girls' mental health issues. Also because, you know, women are more likely to visit healthcare centers because, say, if they get pregnant and things like that. Whereas men, because of this natural thing that they're supposed to be strong and they don't even get sick, they don't access healthcare, primary healthcare. And you will see that men have the highest level of non-communicable diseases. And sorry if I'm going into too much terminology, but, you know, systems are not ready to address the needs of men. And that gets worse for people who are transgender, who are from the LGBT community, because that was actually my thesis topic at Hopkins. So and this is why, so, you know, men aren't given a space to process. Men aren't expected to speak about their emotions, and you find them perpetrating violence in their adulthood. And that is why Shanthi Maargam was started, to kind of break this cycle, to create a space for healing, emotional well-being, and to start looking at gender, and to help young people deal with the key issues they're going to be facing if they're getting out of this box of what it is to be a girl, what it is to be a boy, bullying, sexual reproductive health, all that. But yeah, I can't remember the question, but I'm gone. I don't know like this.
But then in addition to what Shanthi Maargam is doing, so before that you were also, I remember talking about care work in domestic level. And I have found that during this COVID-19 context, with the lockdown and everything, there have been so many conversations going here and there within our network saying that, you know, this care work, it's mainly done by the women. The men do not share the work. You know, it's still work. It's unpaid care work, but it's still work. And I also see not only women who are married, but then even the sisters, you know, the younger generation, everyone is doing the work, whereas brothers are going outside, or fathers are just being, you know, on the balcony or whatever, reading paper and doing nothing at home, you know, not even cooking or helping with whatever. So can you give some insight whether this has been amplified during this COVID-19 context? And I mean, can you give some? Yeah,
of course. I think so. One of the important things, where I work for the World Bank, and we've been engaging with developing COVID responses for countries to support governments. And I think we were fortunate that we had the experience and exposure from Wuhan. There were learnings that came out from it. And we knew beforehand that given this expected role of women, that during lockdown, the burden is going to be higher on women to you know, firstly, I mean, women, they have to give up their work. I mean, a lot of women work as women entrepreneurs also from home. There was also the loss of income, but also the inability to work from home, because a lot of women had to start, you know, doubling up and being the teacher, the mother, you know, doing the homework with the kids who are homeschooling also. And also there's an additional element that anyways, in addition to doing the act of cooking, cleaning, women are also the ones who provide healthcare to the family more than men. So they were more susceptible to contracting the virus than men in that way, in their role. And also you see that in the healthcare system, in the sector, the frontline health workers majority are women, and that holds true for Sri Lanka as well. And so it is, and so therefore women experience a lot more stress. They can't, you know, relax, and they have to carry this burden. And so the work in terms of COVID responses, a lot of the effort was to communicate this need of men getting more engaged, getting more involved. And in addition to this, Kiru, was also the element of increasing domestic violence and abuse, because they had nowhere to go. They're in this suppressive environment. If you look at elements of stress, like, okay, for a lot of men also, issues in jobs, job cuts, pay cuts, etc. Plus, you know, it's fantastic for a person who does not have to worry about people holding him accountable, coming to the house and saying, look, stop what you're doing. So there was a rise in domestic violence and child abuse during the time of COVID. And it is still continuing. So responses, government level responses, UN, all that, they try to address these elements. The limitations now, for example, For example, at Shanthi Maargam or any domestic violence service provider, they had to translate or kind of adjust or adapt their service provision to online service provision or over the phone, not face to face. Yeah.
Yes, as you were talking, so this gender roles, the expectations of a female or male, we see this in a lot of educational institutions, schools, and even workplaces. Can you tell me about like how these gender roles impact women and men, especially youngsters, youth, when they, especially go for their first job or their first volunteering or internship? In that aspect, can you let me know?
Yeah, thank you. So, it comes out a lot in a lot of spaces when there are men and women. And you might observe it more when we have this conversation, is how men take up a lot of space. There's that entitlement. They're used to it. They grow up with it. Let your brother speak. Let your brother, and as a girl, just do what you're supposed to do, like look out, cook, whatever, clean the house. And so, yeah, in workplaces, you will find more often men taking up a lot of space when women are talking, or if there's a conversation. If you really start observing, you will see men take up most of the conversation. And if a woman is trying to speak, he will interrupt, or he will try to finish a sentence for her, or assume that he knows what she was trying to say. You call it mansplaining. There's a term for it. And for girls who are not used to speaking out, and that is why the whole aspect of confidence building, this whole gender role of expecting girls not to be seen but not heard kind of thing, affects girls when they go into the world and they want to seek job opportunities and become a voice. And sadly, there's also the gender stereotyping is, say, for example, if a man is ambitious and if he's goal-oriented, he is goal-oriented, he is ambitious. It's very positive. If a girl is doing exactly the same thing, she's bitchy, she's bossy, it's all in a very negative perspective, and yeah, so those basic things are there. And also, I would say aspects of sexual harassment also come in, because not that sexual harassment does not happen by a woman to a man, but you will see it more often happening by a man to a woman. Also because men, like sexual harassment is a representation or reflection of power imbalances, and a person of more power will perpetrate sexual harassment towards a person with less power. And that will mostly be the way I've seen it across places I've worked is, if it's a person who's on probation, it can be a junior, it can be an intern, it can be someone who doesn't have much of a voice. It's an assumption. And so they also feel that they can, the men can do what they want to do and they will not be held accountable. And that is where also it's very important in organizations that you have systems that people feel they can trust and reach out to, if you want to reduce that aspect. Because also in this, at the World Bank, a study was done to analyze its female labor force participation issue. And out of the 3 key issues why there's low female labor force participation is gender discrimination. Gender discrimination also including salaries, like percentage-wise, I think women even in Sri Lanka get, I think, say something like 25% less. I'm just saying it. Maybe I could share the brief of this, which has the statistics on it. But women get less than men. And also the sexual harassment and gender-based violence that they experience at the workplace and also on the way to the workplace. The girl just has to step out on the street and right, what it's like. So, yeah.
So why don't you also talk about sexual harassment in the public transport? Because I see a lot of research being done, a lot of discussions on that. Could you just give us some insight on that?
Yeah, so UNFPA did a research in 2015, which came up with a statistic of over 90% of women having experienced sexual harassment in public transport. And it has also, I think it's actually 100%, to be honest. But anyway, so and the report talks about how, well, we don't need a report as women, we know it, but just to refer to statistics and reports, the mental, the pressure, the emotional pressure it creates on women, on having to, know that, you're always under stress. And, you're walking down the street and, people are whistling at you or whatever, or some people can say really derogatory terms and things, and you're thinking, what did I do to deserve that, right? And anyway, so yeah, so we know that, so even here, it's mainly men who perpetrate this, and it is so blatant. I mean, talking about my own experience as a 14-year-old in Sri Lanka, coming home from school, a man was leaning against me, a woman could see, she did nothing, I was in shock, and it was an experience that stayed with me for a long time. And so if you're continuously experiencing this, like the stress is huge, women, the research has shown how women even may change or stop working, or they will curb their own mobility. Right, and less mobility means less access to opportunities of work, of experiencing life, or your independence is curbed, right? And it's and it's terrible because not many people stand up against it. And you will see that Oxfam did a detailed study on this recently, and seeking options as to, okay, what should be done? And it was a lot about bringing bystander intervention and like getting men to step up, or getting sensitizing conductors and bus drivers on how to respond to complaints of sexual harassment. How do you make a bus safer? Like, I know when I finally became an adult, if it was happening to me, I would scream at that person. But that's because I had developed a sense of agency. Right? And for example, in child abuse, like men do it to a child knowing that their agency is very small. They don't have a voice, they're less likely to speak out. So yeah, trying to create spaces where people can speak out, and that also means linking up to services. And I mean, in Sri Lanka, sexual harassment in the public is also a criminal offense. So yeah, but then also there's a process of police taking down the complaint and taking it seriously. I mean, so yeah, so that research talks about that, but yeah, sexual harassment in public transport or in public is a serious issue in Sri Lanka.
Right, and also in addition to that, now a new wave of bullying is also happening based on gender, is cyberbullying. Because recently, I think a couple of days ago, in a very famous music segment in one of the channels, had this very talented musician who was a teenage girl, and she won that particular round. And when that was posted on social media, you should have seen all the comments in both English and Sinhala as to how, based on her gender, there was so much of sexual harassment in terms of talking, degrading her body parts, degrading her talents, and how she looks like, her attitude, how she carries herself, and that was a huge issue. Are you aware about that?
Yeah, I've seen bits and pieces about this online, actually, on Facebook, and it's so disturbing. It's so, I mean, even at Shanthi Maargam, we've had people who have come to us for issues of online sexual harassment and bullying, and it's terrible because, yeah, so this is an instance where they're bullying a person, and it can lead to a person feeling so small about themselves, right? And they internalize it, and it can lead to serious feelings of low self-esteem and all that, but also the additional thing of, you see a lot what happens in relationships now is where the male may ask the boyfriend, will say, if you love me, you send me a photo of you like this, like that, and and then he will circulate that with his entire friends network, and it might even end up on some porn site. And it is it is really difficult to control. Like, even if people have come to us, it's like there's only the cert. That's the only place where you can really go to and complain, and they will try their best to like remove that information. But online spreads like this. And once again, why is that? How is that? Like, I mean, how is that? There's that entitled, that sense that you can say things like this about this girl. I mean, why devalue her? I mean, it's her voice, like, and as you said, like making her look, I don't know, talking about her body parts and all that stuff. Like, what is wrong with people? How do you get to that place of feeling that you can be so, use social media in such an insensitive way? And I feel it's also a bit of a herd instinct also. You see other people commenting and you're thinking, oh, yeah, I also do that. But also we talk about, I mean, I believe in my personal journey that hurt people, right? So I think there's also an element of, you also see this like before online bullying became so huge. If you looked at the one-on-one bullying, that personal, like face-to-face bullying that would happen in schools, you would find that a lot of the children who were bullying were actually being bullied or being abused at home. So for me, like, there's that element of, okay, maybe there is something that's happened to this person for them to even feel that it's okay, like normalize, and I don't know, it's very, very complex. But in Sri Lanka, cyberbullying is a huge issue. It is a huge issue. And we're not talking enough about it, and we don't have enough systems in place to deal with it,
Absolutely.
At all ages. Yeah.
Of course, I agree. I absolutely agree. And it's high time that we talk about it and have some sort of system to actually address all these things. Because a lot of young people are getting into this trap, and this particular girl is 16 years, so it's a very sad situation.
And what it does to them, in the adulthood, and even now, I mean, due to confidentiality, I cannot talk about what some of our clients have experienced, but I can say that it can be shattering. It can be like, can even lead to ideas of taking your own life. And you think, why? Because some other people have this free hand of saying things to hurt another person, I think it's a problem in our country also,
So this also brings to my last question. I really don't want to end this, trust me. It's so interesting, and it's a very important discussion we have to have, especially in this day and time. So what I want to ask is, I see a lot of awareness on this gender stereotypes, sexual harassment, everything, every day. I think since I started working in the NGO field, I have seen awareness. I have seen some sort of advocacy. But then there is significant changes, but there is no significant changes also. So can you tell me, apart from this awareness, what else can we do? And I know personally that you do a lot of work. I know that you have been doing a project called Parivartan for boys, where you use sports as a tool to talk about these gender stereotypes. So what are the other innovative, creative methods you would suggest that our youngsters can adapt within their communities?
Yeah, I think we need to go to the very basic concept of how do you change, right? So in the field of engaging men and boys work, this research and even the work that I've been involved in, even in New York, has been centered around 3 core areas on changing men and getting men as allies, proper allies for gender equality and reducing gender-based violence. Number 1 is transformational change. Number 2 is accountability. Number 3 is being proper allies. And I think the core thing here is transformational change. And what that means is that you create a space and an opportunity for men to sit down and start exploring their sense of privilege, their sense of entitlement, the costs and pressures of what it is to be a man in society, and to connect more with who they really are. Not following the herd of, my other friends are Eve teasing this woman, so we should also do it. No, I mean, Parivartan, for example, tries to break through that. But even before you start changing on how the behaviors manifest, you go through that a very detailed and extensive process of internal reflection on how you use your power, how you use your privilege, how entitled do you feel. And it can be very difficult and very painful for men, especially those who really do want to change and, who really have thought that they have done the work they need to do. And in that process also you involve, when I was in New York, we did something called Engaging Men Through Accountable Practice, where we were rolling out a program in countries about where you work with men for 16 weeks. It's a curriculum, like each 1 hour a week, they have this space for conversation about their attitudes and what they need to change. And there's an action plan. And then they check, have I changed? In that would also come, like we were suggesting, like psychosocial support as well, because you would also find that so many men have also experienced violence or abuse, and so they also do need to heal that if you want to break this cycle. So one key thing is, and important, you cannot do this work for sustained change without this element of transformational change. Number 2 is accountability. Accountability to women's voices, because only a woman will be able to tell you exactly what is going on. And to illustrate this, let me give you an example. There's a person called Jackson Katz who works a lot with the military in the States. He does all these workshops on working with men, and the military, is a place where they have like hyper masculine norms and attitudes and lots of violence. And he was doing a workshop, and he took a flip chart paper, put a line in the middle and said men on one side, women on the other. And he asked the men, what do you do to protect yourself or to feel safe in a day? And the men laughed. And they said, no, tell us, what do you do? And then one man said something like, I don't know, like, things that weren't so important, as in, I locked the door of my car or something like that, locked the door of my house. Then he asked the women, okay, what do you do? Do you do anything? Almost all the women put their hands up. And it was about time we leave, how we dress, how people will have the key in between their fingers in case, if they're in a dark alley, how they hold their handbag, all these things, right? And then the men realized, oh my gosh, And so there is a real need, if you want to work on gender equality, that you listen to the women's voices and what is going on. Because in this EMAP intervention that I spoke about when we did in New York, there was a piece of, you also have to work with girls or women at the same time, simultaneously. And so the community, the women in the community were given a space to report back as to whether the men were also changing in their ways, right? And what do the women want? Because what do women want to feel safe in their communities may be totally different to what men perceive women want to be safe in their communities, right? And also the accountability. Like, this person says he's behaving like this, but he's actually really behaving like this in a very harmful manner. So that's number 2. Number 3 is about creating allies, being a proper ally. And that means, and you will see allyship being talked about in Black Lives Matter, in LGBTQ issues and all that stuff. And how is an ally? Like an ally is a person who listens and who uses their privilege to create space and opportunities for the other group. And in this case, it would be women or people from LGBT communities to speak out and to talk about the experiences they have. And so there are examples, as you said, Parivartan for boys. It's very important to work with boys, to start helping them deconstruct. What is it to be a man? What is it to, like, what kind of man do I want to be? It is okay to cry, and I don't have to like look at women in a particular way or treat them as though they're objects, you know. Sadly, that has to be taught, and you have to deconstruct that. EMAP is something that has also been cited as the intervention I spoke of, cited internationally also as a very good program. And Q, talking about this awareness building is because research has also shown that social norm changes also play a role. So you're trying to change a social norm where there's, you know, it is wrong to treat women in a particular way. And you find that that can trickle down into communities. It can make a small change, but without the element of time for reflection, it doesn't work. Yeah,
exactly, absolutely.
And I also personally find it very frustrating when I see huge amounts of money being put up for a billboard or for a TV ad. I mean, there's something called edutainment, where there are television series being developed or addressing issues, because media is a huge influencer. So that has been one way which has shown results. But other than that, I wouldn't really invest too much in, like, because a person can easily say, oh yeah, there are some campaigns where they get men to sign up something saying, yeah, I'm against violence against women. I'm sorry, that isn't enough. There's a lot more that has to happen behind that. Yeah,
exactly. And as you said, yes, media is a huge part, especially in the Sri Lankan community. Even the poorest of the poor, you know, everyone has some sort of television, some sort of cable connection. I recently did a project in the central province in Nuwara and Hatton, and I was visiting some of the line houses. I mean, some of them are under the poverty line, but then they always have a cable TV and television in place inside the house. So television is a huge, media is a huge driver to get this awareness to be successful. But as you said, yes, these kind of, certain awareness might not work, but you will have to, from the foundation, you will have to try to change the attitudes, the behavior, the mindset. And definitely we need the boys to be allies, the men to be, or the males to be allies of this whole campaign.
And I think also being role models, like what does it look like, you know?
Definitely.
I mean, at Shanthi Maargam, we talk about it, but ultimately it's how the team behaves. That the children decide, okay, like, oh yeah, it is okay for a boy to sweep the center, or we won't use violence as a way of handling a situation. We will talk it out, or we will be respectful, things like that. So having good role models is also important. But role models who have done the work of internal reflection.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Kamani, for this beautiful and very interesting discussion. And I know that you're very busy these days, so thank you so much for allocating your time and resources for this, Kamani.
I mean, I'm really happy, and I think I maybe went on a little too technical, and I'm sorry about that. And we didn't manage to, I'm sorry I couldn't use Sinhala terminology. Maybe one day, but it is important, and I'm glad you're taking this message out. And my pleasure to support the very important work that you're doing, and you, of course.
Thank you. So with this, I also would like to tell our audience that if you have any questions, do let us know. Maybe we can, send it across to Kamani, and if she has the time, she can respond to that, and we can, maybe have another session based on those questions, depending on the time and resources. This is the end for today's session. Thank you so much for joining us today, and hope you have a beautiful Sunday evening, and we will be connecting with y'all for another topic next Sunday. More details, please check out our Facebook page, Lanka. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.